Welcome to Try Your Best, a refreshing and approachable podcast dedicated to the exciting realm of innovative technology. As a collective endeavor of the minds behind Host Creative, Precision Point, and the Code and Compassion newsletter, we aim to make technology not just accessible, but engaging for everyone. Good morning, Tim.
Good morning, Josh.
Why are you looking around?
I was looking for a pen. I don't for writing utensil, but that's probably not important.
To use your brain to mark things off.
So we've got two topics on the roster today to talk about. We're going to start with work-life balance, and then we're going to talk about one of my all-time favorite topics of embracing failure. So I really want to talk about the myth of work-life balance. In your opinion, is it realistic, or is it actually a myth?
I don't know who coined the term work-life balance, but I feel like maybe they were retired. I don't know how that works at all. It's more of a pendulum for me than it is a balance, right? There are times where work is super busy and things here require my attention. Not like I'm, sticking my nose in things that don't belong, but like there's actual problems that need solved that I'm the best one to solve those problems. And the same for you, and the same for Mick and other people on our team, where there are times where the business, for it to be as successful as we want it to be, it takes time and energy. And the same is true for family. There are times where there are things going on with our family that require more of my attention for our family to thrive, right? And so I don't know how you ever balance those things out, because I feel like if you actually did balance it out, I feel like you're doing both sides a disservice.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm in a place where work does not require a lot of my attention, but family does, and I'm like, nope, that's not how this works. It's a balance. So every day I'm spending exactly 9.5 hours at work and this much of my energy, and I'm spending this many hours at home and that much of my energy. I'm like, that's not how life works. In an unemotional world, maybe you could balance it out. But that's not the world we live in, nor the world I want to live in. So
No,
I believe it's a
right.
complete myth, and I need to figure out who coined this irrational term. So, like when we talk about integrating work and personal life, right? How do you think about that integration, right? They're not completely removed. They're in different locations sometimes, but now we live in a world where those are not even in different locations. But how do you look at that integration of work and personal life for you, right?
Well, I'm going to go back and talk the myth for a minute, because as a, it's 23, so 2 decades ago when I joined the military, first met Amanda, and we were dating and going through all the stuff of living together in Virginia Beach and trying to figure out how that works apart from both of our families, which is never easy. Anytime that there was a problem, either at work, I brought that home unknowingly, or if there was a problem at home, I took that emotional baggage with me to work, and it clouded all of my productivity. And I think I'm going to use big, aggressive words like I always do. I think it's naive and inauthentic to look at another human being and be like, you can't figure out how to balance work and life, and so you must be doing something wrong. When in reality, that idea of compartmentalizing our lives, as much as we wish it to be true, is false. Much in the same way, book plug, you'll like this, Wrapped, R-A-P-T, is a book about our attention. And it's the study of the fact that we believe we're fantastic multitaskers, and we're horrible at it. There's so much science that proves that we can't split our personalities apart to create a better version of ourselves. You get the whole package: emotions, intelligence, physical health, all of that stuff is spirituality, is all wrapped up into one, and our existence is what we see every day. And we may try and artificially separate our personal life from our work life because we feel like we're in a work environment where we need to insulate our loved ones from what we're doing at work. That's not the case here. But we've all had jobs where we're like, I don't want to talk about my family because I don't trust any of these people, which is a whole different conversation in itself. But the integration of work and personal life resonates with me every day, because as we sit with our employees and we talk about our work product, invariably our life experience filters in and plays some role in how we're dealing with the stuff that's going on. And our life experience, the 80 some odd years between the two of us, is something that we can share with our employees and the coworkers, you know, in the co-working space, and our customers. All of that relevant life experience that we have is what makes us able to work at Ghost Creative and provide quality products for our customers, so on and so forth. Without that, if it's just two dudes sitting across the table, there's not a whole lot of value there.
Yeah. Yep.
So we talked about this yesterday in preparing for the podcast, but TD Jakes has a lot to say about this. How did do his perspectives play into this discussion?
Yeah. You know, I struggled for a long time with trying to balance work and life, because, you know, doing a startup is hard and demanding. And I have no examples of someone that built a startup without putting in massive amounts of effort. Right. And a lot of times the lever on effort is time. Right. I just don't have any examples. So if anybody out there has examples of that, I would love to see them.
Microwave startups versus slow roast startups.
Yeah. Right. And so, you know, I really would beat myself up every time I missed anything that our kids had going on. Right. I mean, and I'm talking middle of the day, something at their school, and I would be at work. And this is not just since I did startups. This is, you know, when I was working. I'm sure there's some, you know, deep psychological flaw that I have in all of this, but again, we'll save that for another podcast. But it's really like I struggled with, man, how can I justify going to work when I'm missing out on some of this family stuff? Mm-hmm. And I think there's two things. One, what opened my eyes to it was hearing TD Jakes talk about it. And TD Jakes saying, this is not going to be an exact quote, but he said something to the effect, like, listen, if your daddy's home all the time, you're broke. Right? Like,
yes.
Like somebody needs to be going to work. And, you know, as the father and the husband in the household, like, you should be getting up and going to work in the morning, right? And then hearing him say it, if people don't know who TD Jakes is, he's a pastor out of Houston, and by way of West Virginia. And
got a plug for West Virginia.
Yeah, because I grew up real close to West Virginia, so I'm giving it a plug. But that, you know, it's biblical. Like we were just looking at, I'm going to forget what book it was in now, Thessalonians, Timothy 1, and it's talking about like these guys that are going to preach at this other church, and then they wrote them a letter. And at the end of the letter, they were like, hey, listen, we work day and night, so you didn't have to give us anything. Like we were preaching, we were doing everything we needed to do during the day, and we were working our butts off all night long to make sure that we were able to pay our own way, right?
Right.
And so it was like, it's biblical to get up and go to work and work hard. So how do you reconcile that with being home with your family? Well, then I heard another guy Stephen Furtick talk about, like, listen, I like to make it to all my kids' baseball games. But sometimes I got to miss one because I'm making money so I can buy him the bat he needs to play, right?
Or the glove.
Or the glove he needs to play. And it's like, yeah, it's definitely a pendulum, right? I think the trick is communication on both sides. Being able to say to the people at work, like, listen, I know Thursday we have a lot of stuff going on. I'm not going to be here all morning. I can't because there's this really important family thing that's going on. I need you guys to pick up the slack for me, right?
But what does that do? That gives all of the people that you work with as leaders in the business, that gives all the people that work for you the agency to say, I have important family things to do as well.
Yes.
And when this is something that I always struggled with early on because I didn't feel like I had that agency in a lot of my early jobs where I would just do what the boss told me to do because they didn't seem to have their own personal lives. They were running their startups. I mean, the first real company that I worked with outside of the restaurant industry was Toshiba telephone system installer. And it was 2 install crews of 3 people, the guy who ran the warehouse, the guy who managed the 1 service technician that we had, and the 2 owners of the business. So that group, that tiny group of people, I didn't realize how small it was or what that meant. I just knew that I was glad to have a job and not be living in the same town my parents lived in. And we worked 12-hour days and in miserable conditions. I don't know if you've ever been in a crawl space in a house in Virginia before on a 98-degree day, but it's not a pleasant experience. But that tiny group of people, all we did was work. We never talked about getting away. We never talked about spending time with our family. It was like, nope, we're at the shop at 6:45 in the morning and we're getting home at 5:50, and we didn't have, besides video games and World of Warcraft, the guy that I worked with, all he talked about was needing to go buy more cigarettes because he smoked like 5 packs of cigarettes a day, and what he was going to do on World of Warcraft overnight. I'm convinced that he didn't sleep. But when you give your employees that perspective of like, I have life outside of work and it's okay. And it's okay for you to have a life outside of work. And if the two conflict, having an honest conversation about how you can level that playing field and go out there and be like, no, I'm not going to be here because I've got my kid's kindergarten graduation, which is ridiculous. And but one of our guys is going to go drive 5 hours to see a movie in Pittsburgh, and that's okay. It's okay to do that. It's expected.
There's 2 things that I want to add to that, Tim. I don't think we have to wait for our bosses to give us permission. So I hope we set that example. But I have a fun story about when I worked at GE.
Okay.
So I was working there as a contractor. I just got hired on full time, and we got a new boss. Nice guy, okay? But he rolled in at like 9 a.m. and he would schedule meetings for like 6:30 in the evening. And one of the things that my wife...
What time were you getting to work?
7.
Okay.
So
he's missed a whole 2 hours every single day.
Right, yeah. And so one of the things that I really try to do, and my wife and I have kind of agreed on, is like our dinner time is, I do everything I can do to be home for dinner. Now, sometimes that means that she pushes dinner back, right? But like, do everything I can do to make it home for dinner because we feel like that's really valuable family time. And so I talked to a couple other people and I'm like, hey, is this like a normal thing where people schedule meetings like in the evening, right? And they're like, well, yeah, kind of. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that. And they're like, well, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I'm going to go tell the boss that I'm not going to be there. And they're like, you can't do that. And I'm like, well, you might want to watch this.
Here, let me show you something you've never seen before.
Yeah. And very respectfully, I went in and I said to my boss, Mr. Boss, I'm like, hey, no disrespect, but like, I can't make meetings at 6:30 in the evening. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, that's my family time. Like my wife and I protect that time. So you schedule it earlier, I will be there. I don't care. You can schedule it 4 in the morning and I'll be here. But at 6:30 in the evening, I can't. Like if it's a special thing, I get it, but not regular, reoccurring 6:30 meetings. And he's like, okay. And I left there thinking, well, I might not have a job anymore.
Right.
And the next day, he schedules the meeting for noon. And I'm like, how many people just blindly showed up to a meeting at 6:30 because he didn't even think about it? He wasn't doing it on purpose. He wasn't being malicious.
Was he married? Did he have kids?
He was married. His kids were older. And it's like,
Right.
you know, so it wasn't like he's like, listen, I'm going to punish these people. You're going to stay for a meeting at 6:30. It wasn't
Right.
that at all. It was just with his schedule, he felt like that worked. And nobody stepped up and said to him politely and respectfully, hey, is there another
Hey, dude, this
time?
isn't working out.
Yeah, is there another time that we could do this that would make more sense for everyone?
Right.
And I had that one conversation as a 24-year-old, and the guy's like, yeah, not a problem.
Right.
I'm like, what are all you people doing? Like, we're all human. You have to be able to have a human conversation with somebody and say, now, if I go in and be like, hey, listen, I'm out at 2:30, so all the meetings got to be done, that's not going to fly,
Yeah,
right?
You're going to have to schedule all my meetings for 10 a.m.
Yeah, there's some reasonable expectation there, but
because I'll be hungover by then.
but I think that's the thing. Is like as employees, you should feel empowered to have real life, honest conversations on both sides, right? You have to have those conversations with your family as well, and be like, hey, listen, this week I'm getting home late. What do I need to do?
We've got
I'm
a
getting
big
home.
push.
Yeah.
Stuff has to get delivered.
It's communication. You hear me talk about this all the time, right? But like, it's communication. Good communication makes a world of difference. So,
The script was good, and you actually led us into what challenges and triumphs have we encountered in our life, and I think we just talked about those. But are there any other quick examples that we can come up with? Ooh, I have a great one.
that was a nice setup for yourself.
Yeah.
You just like threw the softball up and hit it yourself.
Yeah.
I like it.
Which in real life, I'm not that coordinated, so kudos to me. My first job, is this accurate? Was my first job at Olive Garden? Or did I work at the grocery store first? I don't remember. Unimportant. And I was taking community school classes because I had gone off to Virginia Tech and made a mess of it and came back and was like, okay, let's take this a little slower. Fast forward, I didn't finish community college either.
You tried your best.
I tried my best. And I went to my professor. I went to my manager and I said, "Hey, you scheduled me for a Friday shift where I have to take an exam for school. So like I physically can't be present. Can I just come in a little bit later?" Because I didn't want to make the guy mad. And he's like, "No, screw you. You don't get that shift. I'm going to give it to somebody else." And I was like, that doesn't make, how does that work? That doesn't seem fair. Why am I getting punished because I'm trying to make my life better? And with all things Tim, I very shortly no longer worked at Olive Garden by my own choice. Not getting fired, but like I have to do something that's going to work better for me. So I knew enough to be defensive about my own time, but I didn't have the ability to have good conversations back then. And so I know now that I probably could have sat down and had a realistic conversation with the guy, and he probably still would have told me to piss off. But it is what it is. And I'm glad now that I'm able to have the comprehension of the fact that other people have lives. And if they come to you with legitimate stuff going on in their lives, even if it's as silly as, I don't know, going to a roller skating rink, we want to support that because if people are happy, they're going to stay, they're going to do better work, and they're going to feel like they can come to you with their own suggestions about product that our finite knowledge may not incorporate. And so, even in the little things like work life balance, if you're giving that agency to the people that surround you, it elevates their engagement in the business by giving them the opportunities to say, hey, you let me do this. Let me tell you about another idea that I had that we could do that could end up being the thing. And so I really love that whole treating people like people and not resources. I have a big problem with that division of most businesses, that we're referring to the people that we have built community around as resources, because they're not. They're people and they have lives too.
Yep.
So this is, I'm going to pivot to our next topic, embracing failure, with a fun story about math. You love math, right?
I do love math.
I decided to go back to college in 2013 when I got out of the military. And when you're that old, in your 30s, we'll say, because I don't want to give away the fact that I'm 43, but when you're in your 30s, they make you take a math assessment test. And I don't know if Penn State was just messing with me, but I feel like the math assessment test was like 5,000 questions. It was probably like 40, but it felt like the most arduous thing I'd ever done. And I realized on like question 6 that I had no idea, none, how post-high school math worked. And in the years from high school graduation, where I think I graduated pretty well, not top of my class, but like I understood math then, to fast forward 15, 20 years later and sit down and be like, okay, let's evaluate algebra. Can we do algebra? No, we can't. So they were like, you've got to go back and do basic math. So I legitimately started back with basic algebra and had to go through 3 classes to get to college level math. And I took a couple of those classes and got to calculus. And yeah, Tim and calculus are not on the same wavelength at all.
There are a lot of people that are not friends with calculus. You're in good company.
So after, and without naming any names, because I don't want to get anybody in any trouble, when I took that class, I realized rather quickly, because I had just come off a previous semester taking statistics. And statistics is its own kind of brand of math. And I love statistics. Like that clicked. So then to go to the antithesis of that with calculus and know almost immediately that it didn't click, I went to some tutoring sessions that they offered with like grad school students. And I'm like, can you try and explain it another way? And the guy's like, we're running out of pencil, dude. Like, I don't know how to tell you any more of this. I'm like, okay. So we get through like the first 2 exams, and I got a 60 on the first one and like a negative 500 on the second one. And I went to sit with the professor. I'm like, hey, dude, like, here's the situation that I find myself in. Uncle Sam's paying for my education. Thank you. Well, I guess I should thank myself for my service, but that's a whole different story, right? And if I fail this class, I have to pay it back. And like, I'm working a job at Lowe's. I don't have the money to pay this class back. So what do you suggest? And he goes, are you planning on doing anything with math in your career? And I'm like, no. I'm like, at the time I was I was at Lowe's, so no. And he goes, tell you what, I'll give you a D in the class so you don't have to pay it back. And I'm like, I'm legit okay with that. He goes, you just got to promise me you're never going to do anything with math in the future. And I'm like, I'm down with that. I'm okay with that. And So that made the class really fun. He was like, still come to class, still take the test, still engage with the classroom. It was a Tuesday, Thursday class, 2 sessions back to back with a 10-minute break in between. So we were there for like 2.5 hours every twice a week, like painful. So the final exam comes. I get my exam booklet. I sit down. I start writing on it. I write my name. I go through and I'm like, yep, I don't know what that means. And I don't know what that means. And I don't know what that means. And I wrote a joke on there and drew some stuff. And I'm like, well, it's been 10 minutes. And I go up and I put it on the desk and I leave the classroom. And they had like this mezzanine lobby area that had a bunch of furniture in it to hang out between classes. So I'm sitting out there doom scrolling on my phone. And the smartest kid in the class, who regularly let everybody know that he was the smartest kid in the class, because he always participated and he made really good commentary when he would ask questions or engage with the professor and that kind of stuff. He comes out, he sits down, and he goes, dude, you destroyed that test. I'm like, yep. He goes, what was your study program? And I'm like, I didn't study. I failed that test. And he was like, you could tell that he was like preparing to retort with something witty to whatever I said about my study program. And I caught him off guard by saying that I failed the test. And he looks up at me across this little crappy end table and goes, what do you mean you failed? And I'm like, dude, I don't get calculus at all. I'm failing this class. And it didn't compute. You could see it in his eyes. It didn't compute at all. And he's like, that's not okay. Now, this is a 200 level class. So he's been in school for a while, and clearly he's getting straight A's because you can just tell the type. No offense to all you straight A students. I love you guys.
None taken.
And I'm like, dude, I don't want to be rude to you, but have you ever failed at anything in your life? And he goes, what do you mean by that? I'm like, did you get bad grades in high school? Did you do poorly on your sports teams? Did you ever not get picked for dodgeball? Like, well, and he goes, no, like I've been a success at everything I've done in my life. And I'm like, okay, I just want to prepare you. You're going to fail at some point. And that's okay. Failing gives us the agency to say, that's something I'm not good at, so I don't have to try at that anymore. What are the things that I'm good at? Let me do more practice on those so I can perfect my craft. It allows us to load balance our life, much akin to the imagined work-life balance. The things that you're good at, don't waste time on, and the things that you are good at, perfect. Because there's somebody that you can bring into your organization or into your life that has those skills, if they're important to you, that you can leverage, while you provide the skills that you can leverage into their life. And then you get a higher level of quality across all of the things that you produce. And so I'm explaining this to this kid at like 6:45 at night in the math building on Penn State Barron's campus. And fast forward to 2017, I'm standing over here at the Erie Insurance Arena, getting ready to queue up to graduate from Penn State. And this kid comes walking by, and he sees me, and he lights up, and he goes, Tim, I can't thank you for telling me it's okay to fail. The next semester, I failed 2 classes, and I was okay with it. And my parents were outraged. And I explained what you explained, and it was like watching them hear a hidden secret. And I'm like, isn't it amazing the culture that we create in our families sometimes? Because we've all seen those kids that look like they're driven, but it's not internal, it's external. And they're trying to provide relevance to someone else when in reality, maybe that's not their thing. And so it's one of those moments of that I will remember for the rest of my life because I don't feel like enough people are given the chance to fail and create success on the back of their failures. And I said to the kid, like, look, my life is a laundry list of failures. I wouldn't be where I am today without those failures. It makes me who I am. So, how do you feel like failure contributes to success?
Well, you know when it happens. Failure or success. I don't know. No, I feel like we've. So one of the things I have 4 kids, right? One of them in college, one of them getting ready to be a senior, another one getting ready to be in 10th grade. We're gonna go with. I always know their ages. I never know what grade they're in.
That's fair. That's fair.
But here's what I tell
You
my
don't
kids.
celebrate their grades. You celebrate their birthdays.
No, I'm like, man, just make it to the next one, right? So I talk to my kids a lot as they get older about like, what do you want to do with your life, right? Mm-hmm. And they're getting asked this question of like, at 18 or 17, like, I need you to sit down and define your career path. I'm like, first of all, ask them to define the word career. Let's talk about that first, right? Like, a lot of people don't even know what a career is versus a job, right?
Yes.
And they're feeling a lot of pressure. And I'm going to go off on a slight tangent here because I feel like the pressures are important when it comes to this whole topic of failure, right?
Okay, we only have like 4.5 gigs left on that memory card.
We'll be fine. It won't be that far of a tangent. Tie a rope around my waist and pull me back just in case I get too far off track. But a lot of schools now, like if you look at public and private schools both, their marketing material is around their percentage of college placement. And if you look at colleges, their marketing material is around percentage of job placement or higher education placement. And so they're incentivized to make sure at the high school level that the kids get into an advanced placement program, college, military, not a job.
Yes.
Right? And at the college level, they're incentivized to like pick something, right? Just pick something and do it now, right?
Yes.
And I feel like we're asking completely the wrong questions. Mm. And so because of that, they're like, what do you want to do? What degree do you want to get? Pick out of this book that is dated, that most of these careers are not things. And there's a whole...
Gates 1972.
Yeah, and there's a whole plethora of things that are real careers that are not listed in that book.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely the wrong question.
Right.
And in my opinion, the question is, what do you want to try next?
Yes.
Right? Completely different thing. And there's nuances to the question. One, what do you want to try? So if I'm trying something, the definition of failure is different. Because if I say, I'm going to climb that mountain, right, and I don't make it up the mountain, I fail. But if I say, you know what, I'm going to try it, and I get halfway up, I succeeded.
Yes.
Right? Because I tried to climb. That was the goal, was to try to climb the mountain, right? And like, what do you want to try next implies that there's likely going to be something that comes after.
Yes.
And I feel like those two nuances are so important in that question.
Yes.
And that's not just a question for high school kids.
No.
Right? It's a question for everybody. Whether you're in the middle of a business and you say, all right, I'm ready to take this thing to the next level. What am I going to try next?
Yes.
Or you're 17 and you don't know what you want to do, and your guidance counselor is sitting you down saying, okay, here's this book. I need you to pick one of these. Are you going to be a physical therapist, or are you going to be one of these other 4 things, right?
Right.
And we need that now because we have to document this so that we can publish our marketing material and not lie about it, right? So it's like we have to start asking the right questions to other people and to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the flip side of that, there are times where we just can't be okay with failure. And in my opinion, those are relationships.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we can't just say, you know what? I tried to have a good relationship with my kids. Like, I get it, but like the goal is not trying, right? The goal is bringing massive amounts of humility and love. And not saying you're going to succeed, but not being okay with the failure. Like if I'm trying to climb Mount Everest and I've never climbed a mountain before, I'm okay if I don't make it, right? But like if I'm never going to be
As long as you
okay,
survive to try again.
right? I'm never going to be okay. I'm not going to say it's never going to happen, right? Like I don't know the future. I'm not God. I can't predict the future, but I'm never going to be okay with just walking away from a relationship with my kids and be like, you know what, it just didn't work out.
Yeah.
So I think there are times where we have to evaluate the importance of what we're trying and how far we're willing to go to try to make it work. Here's the thing, and I love math, so you might disagree with me, but if you were able to put every ounce of energy you had and you had the best teacher in the world, you could have figured out calculus.
Oh, absolutely. I don't doubt that at all.
Right.
But at the moment, with all of my priorities and my 3 or 4 year old daughter at home, and us trying to acclimate to a new city, I knew that calculus wasn't the thing. And given what I have seen and what I know, calculus wasn't going to serve me in any valuable way. And now that I have chat, I'm sure I can ask chat to teach me calculus and we can probably get somewhere.
Yeah. So this is one more point around that. So often what we define as failure was a lack of priority. And so I'm not going to climb Mount Everest because I'm not going to spend any time practicing to do that, right? A lot of businesses fail because people aren't willing to work 18 hours a day at them.
Yes.
So is it really failure? Or is it really, I said, I'm not willing to put that much effort into that thing? Most people do not become professional athletes because it takes a massive amount of work. I always joke with my kids that college relationships are where professional athlete dreams go to die, right?
Oh, for sure.
Because it's like, I'm not willing to spend every waking hour in the gym because I love this person and I've decided that I want to spend time with them instead. So I feel like our whole definition of failure is completely wrong.
Yeah. And you like to talk about Seth Godin. I like to bring up Gary Vee. He's got a great thing about what you just talked about, this whole mechanism to push people out of the education system and into the workforce. He's like, if you're 20 to 28 years old, you should be failing as rapidly as you can. Go try and be in retail and see how that works and fail at it. Go try and work in the restaurant business and fail at it. Go try marketing, go try sales, go try traveling abroad. Whatever things that come into your head, go try those things. And then when you get a little bit further down the road and you've tried a whole bunch of stuff, then you can really dial in and focus on the thing that lights you up on the inside. And I feel like high school guidance counselors aren't having those conversations still. Some of them may be, and to those of you that are, please continue. To those of you that aren't, have those conversations because it's okay. It's okay to go into the trades. It's okay to go to a technical school. It's okay to join the military. All of those things are valid because we need people doing every single one of those things. And, we spent the last 20 years or more, 30 years or more, telling people that they had to go to college. If you're not going to college and getting a 4-year degree, you're not doing the right thing. But as someone who tried college and failed, tried community school and failed, went off to the military and came back and honestly barely graduated from college again, it's not easy. But it's not the school that's the thing. Employers are never going to look for your transcripts. And if they are, I don't understand why, because I don't know, crayon shaping and basket weaving, or like, who cares? What they want to see is they want to see you go and do a thing for an extended period of time and say, I learned something from it. And if you can do that, we have a guy who works for us. Is he 21? Yeah, he just turned 21.
Yeah.
He graduated from high school, went into the workforce, came to work for us, has been working for us, doing amazing things for quite a while now. One afternoon I asked him, I was like, hey, why don't you go to college? You're clearly smart enough. And he goes, that's not my jam. Like, that's not my thing. I knew that I didn't want to sit in any more classes. And with the power of distributed knowledge, he has more information available at his fingertips today than ever before. And tomorrow will be even better because there's more information available. And he's been doing graphic design for us and has all of those amazing resources to make beautiful content. And he does every day. And we're very thankful for that. So, to wrap up my monologue, sorry about that, everyone. Um, there's so much perspective that we're not giving young people when we take away their options to fail. I feel like there's a lot of well-intentioned adults that are trying to put the bumpers up on these kids' life lanes so that they don't get hurt. But most of the greatest lessons that I've learned in my life are directly off the back of my biggest pain and biggest failures. And so if you put those bumpers up on that path, you're eliminating character building out of those kids. And as much as we don't ever want to see our kids fail, we have to let them to make them the people that we know they're capable of being. Ooh, that got really deep. Sorry, everyone.
No, it's part of where empathy comes from.
Mm-hmm.
If I believe that I've never failed, when I see somebody else do it, I'm like, man, what's wrong with you, right? But when I felt that feeling of like, I actually did give it my all, and I just couldn't do it, man, when you see somebody else going through it, you're like, I feel it, man. I feel it. Like, we need to talk because, like, I've been there, but the amount of resolve that I have from being there cannot be explained to you, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So, how do we?
Let's just jump down to the last question.
Yeah, that's where I was going.
How can a shift in these attitudes encourage innovation and growth?
I mean, what is innovation, right? You're trying something new.
Yes.
You're trying something new. When have you ever seen anybody that has never ridden a bike, kid, adult, doesn't matter, that just jumped on the bike and took off? There's this amazing video, I don't know if you've seen, where this guy takes a bicycle and he changes the handlebars so that when you turn right, the wheel turns left. And when you turn left, the wheel turns right. Okay? And he, as an adult who's ridden a bike plenty of times, gets on it and cannot ride it.
No.
And he has clip after clip after clip of him just crashing trying to ride this thing, right? And so it turned into this, like, amazing conversation about, like, he'd never done that before.
Right.
He'd never done. It was impossible for anybody on paper. You can watch all the YouTube videos you want. When you get on that thing, you're going to crash.
Yes.
Right? And a side note, one of the amazing things was when you let kids do it, they learn it so much faster.
Almost instantaneously.
Yeah. They still can't figure it out right away.
Right.
But I feel like kids that have never ridden a bike would figure it out faster. Right?
Sure.
And so that's innovation.
Yes.
I'm going and trying something new, even if somebody else has done it and they've told me about it, right? But we're going to push it a little bit further. You're stepping into new territory.
Right.
Setting
aside your preconceptions, stepping into new territory.
Until we can figure out how to predict the future and teach people how to manage the future without having been there, we're going to fail. And so you have to build this culture. Now, here's the thing. When I hear companies label themselves of like, we're highly innovative, I'm like, you better not be. Because, like, there has to be some stuff that you know how to do. Right? Like, there better be, like, a bedrock of things that you're good at and you know how to do, and then part of the time you're spending innovating, right?
And come work for me. I have 7,000 failed experiments.
Exactly. We haven't figured anything out yet, but we're still working on it. And so that, to me, is like, you gotta set aside this time where you say, in these projects, where we say, hey, listen, the likelihood of success on this is low, but if we fail, it's not for lack of effort.
Right.
Like, that's my thing. It's like, we didn't fail for lack of effort. We didn't fail for lack of thoughtfulness. Like, we failed because, like, we tried and it was really stinking hard. And we just didn't figure it out, right? And so if you don't build that culture, you end up building what everyone else is building, because that's the alternative. Well, just almost spilled my coffee. That was close.
You said you weren't going to use that mug. You were
know.
just using it as a prop.
I was, but coffee smells so good. I had to keep drinking it. So the opposite of that, like think about the life you have to build so that you never fail. It means you only get to do one. You can't interact with people, right? Because to never fail, everything has to stay the same.
Mm.
That's not how humans work, right? And on top of that, you have to just do the things that you have the highest probability of success at. And that's the opposite of growth, right? So like, to me, if you're going to say the business, personally, whatever, I have to avoid failure at all costs, you're completely stagnant. And stagnant water gets real stinky real quick.
It does. So are we saying that there aren't seasons in people's lives where they are stagnant?
I think that's 100% okay to be stagnant. Right. Really what we're talking about here from beginning to end with this conversation is...
We're running out of space, my guy.
Okay, we'll wrap this up right now. From beginning to end is everything is a pendulum.
Yeah.
Right? Everything is a pendulum.
So you've got success, your failures, you've got your great successes, and then you have a whole ton of time down here in the middle where everything's kind of okay.
Yes.
Kind of.
Where
you're just trying your best.
Just trying your best. All right. Well, this is good stuff. We could talk for another hour about this stuff, but...
we'll have to get a bigger SD card.
All right. Whether you're a seasoned professional, a budding tech enthusiast, or a curious listener, Try Your Best has something for you. So tune in and join us as we explore the future of technology, one potentially engaging episode at a time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.